About damn time. What was originally introduced to us as a 2016 concept model is finally here as a 2021 production motorcycle. And I am, of course, talking about Yamaha's new Ténéré 700. Now, chances are you've seen some of the reviews coming out from Europe because they've had this bike now as a production model for a little over a year, but we're just getting our hands on it here in America. Now, if you can believe the hype, Yamaha's got what's shaping up to be a pretty successful motorcycle based on the popularity of the adventure segment here in the US. I want to take it out and I want to test it for myself to see how good it really is. So I'm going to pack up and head out to Bald Eagle State Forest. It's one of my favorite areas for motorcycle riding. It's got some great sport touring roads, some killer trails, and it really is the perfect location to test the duality of an adventure bike. So I'm going to load up, I'm going to head out, and I'm going to take you along for the ride.
So here we are in the beautiful Pennsylvania countryside. This is actually not too far from where I grew up. Some of the best sport touring roads and off-road riding in the state. So I figured this would be the perfect place to talk about the Ténéré 700's street prowess. I just wrapped up a 150-mile jaunt on the highway to get here. I was cruising about 85 miles an hour with hard luggage. And when I stopped to fill up the tank, I did calculate the fuel mileage, and I was averaging about 47 miles to gallon, which is not too shabby for this little parallel twin. When you look at some of the bigger bikes out there, the larger adventure bikes, which guzzle fuel at a much higher rate, I think that you could definitely expect to get about 200 miles to a tank with this bike. Even if you are heavy-handed on the throttle like I am, I would say that if you are a bit more conservative with your right hand, you might even be able to get more than 200 miles out of a tank. Now, if I was going far into the backcountry where I might get stuck for days, I'd probably start to get a little bit weary, probably around 170 miles or so. But just something to keep in mind, the engine that is sipping this fuel just so daintily is the 692cc parallel twin that Yamaha also uses in their MT-07 and their XSR 700. It's an engine that I really like. There are some slight differences. It gets a dedicated ECU. It does get different intake, different exhaust. But for the most part, you're looking at about 72 claimed horsepower, about 50 foot-pounds of torque. The one thing I will say is that the Ténéré 700 does accelerate a little bit more enthusiastically based on the fact that the final gearing on this is actually a little bit lower. So it accelerates a little bit quicker on the road, and then when we get off-road, you'll see really how you can lug the engine. And that's one of the things that impresses me about this, is that there's a wide range of power on this bike, from 2,000 RPM all the way on up. Now on the highway and just cruising here on these back roads, I like it right between like 5,000, 7,000 RPM. There's a nice little range where you can kind of crank back there and it automatically picks right up. But what you will notice is that the only thing controlling the engine is your right hand, because there are really no electronics on this bike to inhibit the engine. There's no traction control, there's no rider modes, there's nothing like that. It's a very basic machine. The only thing that we really see here from an electronic standpoint is going to be ABS. You'll notice even the dash is just a basic LCD dash. So if you're one of those folks that's looking for a bare bones motorcycle, you don't like all the whiz, bam, gizmo-tree on motorcycles today, I think this one's going to be right up your alley. The only thing that I did find myself longing after would be electronic cruise control. I've had electronic cruise control on a couple of my bikes now, and a lot of the press bikes that we ride have it. So we're riding out here on the highway. I did find myself trying to stretch my right hand out from time to time. Now, the overall comfort in the highway, I will say, has been impressive. Whenever I go into an adventure bike review, I'm always like, how good is it off-road? But I think we have to remind ourselves that the majority of the time, these bikes do live on the street. And as far as like a nice middleweight touring bike, it's a very comfortable machine. The windscreen does a really good job of keeping the wind off of my chest without causing any buffeting on my helmet or my head. I am 6'3". I did opt for the taller seat, the rally seat, if you will. That does make it more comfortable for me, but I would say would probably make it a little bit more vertically challenging for shorter riders, as now the seat height with this rally seat is over 36 inches. But Yamaha does a really good job of having different seat heights. They even have a lowering link, which makes it more approachable for riders that would like to try taking an adventure bike off-road. They're just intimidated by the size of a lot of the adventure bikes out there. And the Ténéré 700 is smaller. Claimed weight on this is just over 450 pounds, which makes it more manageable. Now, speaking of off-road, we're gonna find our campsite, we're gonna set up camp, we're gonna lose these saddlebags, and we should have some time this afternoon to get up in those woods and have some fun.
Well, that was easy. Let's go ride. So we left off talking about the weight of this bike on the street, and honestly, it's the first thing you notice when you get it off-road is how lightweight it really feels compared to the other adventure bikes on the segment. And I know there's probably some people out there on dirt bikes and dual sports saying 450, 460 pounds isn't lightweight, but when you compare this to something that weighs 500 to 550 pounds, it's extremely, extremely lightweight. And I think it's very approachable in that nature. Now, the one thing that did surprise me was the tank felt a bit wide. When I was riding this, I was expecting it to feel a bit more narrow. There were two simple little adjustments that I made that did help with this. One was I just rotated the handlebars forward a little bit, which helped me to get up over the tank a little bit easier, just held my weight forward. And then the other thing was adding that rally seat. The rally seat allows you to move your body around easier. Keep in mind when you're riding adventure bikes, it's really about leveraging the weight of your body against the weight of the motorcycle. Now, I was surprised that Yamaha didn't have any kind of off-road ABS setting. You do have ABS on the bike, and you can turn it off. But unlike some other manufacturers which allow you to leave it on at the front wheel, Yamaha doesn't do that. You turn it off completely. Now, their method of adjusting for this is that the front brake is extremely progressive. When I say extremely progressive, I mean it's almost not there on the street where you're pulling back, and you're just like, oh, wait, there it is. But here off-road, that actually works in your favor quite a bit. The one issue that I did have was with the rear brake. I've adjusted the pedal twice, and I can't get it to sit exactly where I love the feel of that rear brake. I feel like it's like either nothing or everything, which makes it really easy to slide, but not so great if you're trying to come to a controlled stop. Now, there's probably something in the aftermarket world that allow you to modify and fix it, but really the only thing I'd be spending money modifying right out of the gate would be, you know, some crash protection, maybe some engine guards or some hand guards in case you go down on some of these rocks that I'm like plowing through right now. The one thing that I wouldn't modify right out of the gate would be the suspension. You know, when I was down in Georgia riding this, I got to work with Noah, who was our ride leader, and, you know, he helped walk me through the compression and rebound settings, the preload for the rear, and we came up with a setting that worked pretty well for me. And I'm a rider on the larger side, about 235 pounds with my gear on, and I would say it's definitely impressive. Now, when I was hitting some of the larger water bars and stuff, yes, I can still bottom it out. I think for heavier riders and advanced riders, you would probably want to put modifying the suspension on your list, but I think for the average rider or for the rider that's just not planning on going too aggressively off-road, I think Yamaha did a very good job with the stock suspension on this bike, especially considering the price. And the price is something I want to dive into a little bit more in depth, but we are getting late in the day. So let's head back to the campsite and we can carry on this discussion a little bit further. Whew. The Yamaha Ténéré 700 has an MSRP of $9,999, makes about 70 horsepower, and if you can believe what Yamaha is telling us, weighs somewhere between 450 and 460 pounds. So how does this measure up against the competition? Well, I'll tell you one thing. If this came out 4 years ago, when they first teased it to us in 2016, it would have decimated the competition of the day. But a lot's happened in 4 years. The adventure bike segment is one of the largest growing segments in motorcycling, and the competition is fierce. On the smaller side of things, we saw Kawasaki introduce a Versys X300, Honda introduced a CB500X, and even Royal Enfield got in the game with the Himalayan. Now, on the larger, more established side of the adventure bike world, BMW released a 750, 850, and 1250 GS. KTM released a whole slew of adventure bikes ranging from a 790 to a 1090 up to a 1290. Triumph just released a brand new Tiger 900, and even Honda has released a new 1100 version of their Africa Twin. So where does the Ténéré 700 fit in? Is it still a relevant bike in 2020? I think it is. It really blows away any of the competition from a performance standpoint of those smaller bikes I just listed. It's more capable. And then when you look at the larger side of the spectrum, it's more affordable and it's less complex. For folks that just want a simple, fun bike to ride, they don't want all the fancy electronics and they don't want to spend $15,000 or $20,000, this is a bike that I think a lot of people are going to gravitate towards, especially just getting into the segment. It's fun and sporty to ride in the street. You can load it down with luggage and tour with it. And if you want to go off-road and try your hand at the whole in-the-dirt ADV thing, it's easy to ride and approachable for a novice. And it's still a hell of a lot of fun for a more experienced adventure rider. Now, I do think that if you're a more experienced adventure rider, you're probably gonna have a list of modifications you're gonna wanna make, but with an MSRP of right around 10 grand, you're gonna have some coin left in your pocket to be able to spend modifying this motorcycle. I really think this is gonna be one of those gateway drugs for a lot of people that have always wanted to get into adventure riding, but they weren't sure exactly where to start. The reason this segment's become so popular is it's fun. You go away for a long weekend, you ride off-road, you get a little bit dirty, you come back at the campsite, you crack a beer, and you tell stories of your friends. That's exactly what I intend to do for the remainder of this weekend. I got nothing to do for the next 2 days except for ride this bike and hang out around a campfire at night. So if you want more information on the Ténéré 700, I'd recommend heading over to Common Tread, where you can read my full write-up of the Ténéré and all the details that I put together and some of the theories we threw out about this bike. And also make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube, because we've got tons of content rolling out for you here at RevZilla.com. I want to thank you for joining us for this first ride review of the Yamaha Ténéré 700. I'm Spurge. Enjoy the ride.